O alphas, where your threat once slumbered, where your rage was once idle, and your will tethered to comfort, how did you become this? This beast of momentum, this juggernaut of evolution, this towering proof that not every soul needs permission to rise. You stand now like someone who wasn't supposed to make it. You weren't supposed to become this powerful, this awakened, this painfully aware of your dominion. Somewhere, the rules were ignored. The script was burned. You stopped following the path laid by hands weaker than yours, and you wrote your own ascent with blood, betrayal, loneliness, and unapologetic fire. And now they stare, eyes trembling, voices cracking, asking one question, dripping with disbelief. How did you become this? And you don't answer, because you don't owe them your origin story. What they see now, this raw, illegal strength, was built in silence, in darkness, in moments no one stayed to witness. It was born in failure, in the nights where your chest caved in under anxiety, but you still got up the next day. In the betrayals that gutted you but didn't kill you. In the moments you begged for peace, but chose war instead. They think you skipped the tutorial? Number. You lived the tutorial longer than anyone. You suffered in the shadows. You were the unchosen, the misunderstood, the underestimated. You were the one they left out of the prophecy. And still, you arrived, uninvited, unrelenting, untouchable. You weren't built like this for comfort. No, your power was forged for destruction, for rebirth, for revolution. Look at your hands. These aren't hands that prayed. These are hands that clawed, that broke chains and built empires. These are the hands of someone who understood early that kindness without boundaries is exploitation, that loyalty without self-respect is slavery, that silence is a weapon when aimed right. They wonder why it feels illegal, why your presence disrupts rooms and alters atmospheres. It's because you don't belong to the old system anymore. You are evolution personified. You are entropy with purpose. You are divine chaos. There is something terrifying about a person who is no longer hungry for approval, about a soul that walks through the world knowing it doesn't owe a performance. That's you now. There's no mask anymore, no watered down version, just raw, dangerous truth. And it makes them flinch, because people weren't ready for someone who didn't shrink, someone who walked into the fire and smiled. They're used to begging, to performing, to breaking themselves into acceptable pieces. And you didn't ask, you didn't wait, you took. And they can't track your steps because your rise was not linear. It wasn't clean. It wasn't blessed by soft hands or whispered affirmations. It was feral. It was primal. You didn't get here by following the manual, you broke it. You wrote your own rules in the blood of your former self. You committed to the violence of healing. You tore your identity apart and stitched it back with steel and spite. This isn't power born from ease. This is power born from survival, from choosing yourself over and over when no one else did. You are what happens when pain is weaponized instead of worshipped. You are what happens when suffering doesn't make you bitter, it makes you better. They will label it arrogance, madness, obsession. Let them. Because while they choke on the stories of who you were, you're busy becoming the thing they told you you'd never be. You are not soft. You are not sorry. You are not here to explain. You are here to conquer. And now, they want to know where it came from. This dominance, this energy that rips comfort from their hands just by existing. They don't realize that the most dangerous creatures are the ones that were once prey. You didn't start out fierce. You were made that way. Shaped by neglect, tempered by rejection, sharpened by loneliness. They think it's unnatural, this strength, like you cheated. But they don't know you trained in hell. You mastered yourself when no one was watching. You learned to breathe underwater when life kept trying to drown you. And now you walk like a god because you survived like a demon. There's a cost to this power though. You know it. You paid it. That's what makes you so lethal. You aren't afraid to lose anymore. You've lost before. Everything. Peace, people, pieces of yourself. But each time, you came back less human and more myth. That's why this feels like a glitch to them, like you skipped the tutorial. Because you made a choice they never dared to make. You chose to become unrecognizable. And now, no cage fits, no leash holds. You are too much and too real. And it's terrifying, for them, but for you. It's liberation. It's a sacred rage. It's clarity so sharp it cuts through every lie they sold you. The lie that said you had to wait, had to earn, had to behave. You don't need permission to be what you already are. And what you are is terrifying because it's pure, untamed, unrepentant. They don't make room for beings like you. So you built your own arena, and you entered it bleeding, laughing, ready. Because at your core, you are war. Not the kind that burns villages, the kind that burns illusions. You make people face themselves, and in a world addicted to denial, that makes you dangerous. They thought they broke you, that the silence meant defeat, that the scars meant surrender. But scars are trophies to those who've earned their strength. Silence is sacred to those who've learned to listen to their inner voice above the noise. And you didn't break. You evolved. You didn't fall. You descended, like a storm sent to test the weak foundations of a world built on lies. So how TF did you become this? They'll keep asking, whispering, accusing. But deep down, they know. They know you're what happens when someone stops pretending, when someone stops people pleasing, when someone stops fearing the cost of being themselves. You didn't become this overnight. You earned this in hours of unseen effort, of tears that never left your eyes, of rage that never turned into hate, but into hunger. You're not just powerful, you're necessary. The system wasn't made for you, so you became the system breaker. The gate was never open, so you built a new road. Every scar, every rejection, every failure, they were instructions. And you followed them like ancient scripture. Not to be holy, but to become whole. You are the reminder that evolution doesn't ask for permission. It just happens. Violently, beautifully, irreversibly. And now, you walk among the ruins of your past selves like a monarch born of fire, not birthright. This wasn't gifted. It was taken, ripped from the jaws of mediocrity and redefined through sheer force of will. They'll try to dim you, to question you, to tame you, but there is no going back. You didn't just change, you transcended. And anyone who dares to walk beside you must be willing to burn too, because greatness doesn't sit in safe places. It doesn't whisper, it roars. And you're the loudest silence they've ever heard. They try to trace your transformation like it's a formula, like if they ask the right questions or mimic the right habits, they'll become this too. But this isn't a trend. This isn't a mindset you copy from a podcast or a morning routine you learn from an influencer. This is pain incarnate. This is grief that refused to be quiet. This is suffering that built something so sharp, so divine. It cuts through the illusion of normalcy. You didn't become this. You unleashed this. It was always there, buried under layers of programming and politeness and poisoned comfort. What they're witnessing now is the release of something ancient, primal, eternal. You were never meant to blend in. That ache in your chest when you try to be like them, That was your power suffocating. That wasn't anxiety. It was your potential trying to escape its chains. And once you let it, once you stopped apologizing for your intensity, your depth, your edge, that's when the shift happened. That's when the world started feeling too small for you. Because it was. It always was. And now you wear your difference like armor. Now your very presence is an act of rebellion. You became the version of yourself that others fear becoming, not because it's bad, but because it's too honest, too raw, too true. You say what they're too afraid to speak. You feel what they're too numb to acknowledge. You break what they were told must stay whole, and you rebuild it your way. You don't wait for instructions anymore. You are the blueprint, and that's dangerous to those who profit from your silence. They say it feels illegally powerful, like you skipped the tutorial. But what they don't see are the years you spent in spiritual exile, the mental breakdowns that felt like soul deaths, the nights you prayed to gods you didn't believe in just to feel something real. You didn't skip anything. You endured everything. And still, you rose. You rose without applause, without backup, without someone saving you. And now they think it's magic. But it's not. It's work. Relentless, brutal, thankless work. You're what happens when someone decides to make peace with their darkness instead of run from it. When someone realizes that the shadow isn't the enemy, it's the birthplace of their greatest strength. You dove into your own abyss, and instead of drowning, you found wings. That's why you don't fear anymore. Not the way they do, because you've already met the worst version of yourself, and instead of destroying you, it introduced you to your power. You're not a hero in their story. You're a glitch in their matrix. You make them question their choices, their limits, their fake peace. Because while they were busy building lives that looked good on the outside, you were busy becoming someone who feels unshakable on the inside. You didn't chase status. You chased truth. You didn't seek attention. You demanded respect. And now, they look at you like a threat because your very existence exposes the lie they built their identity on. You're not even angry anymore. That's the part that unnerves them most. You're calm, focused, still. And that stillness, that's not passivity. That's power under control. That's chaos tamed. That's destruction with purpose. You could burn it all down, but you don't need to. Because just by being, you unravel their illusions. Your silence speaks. Your absence hurts. Your presence transforms. They think it's unfair that you carry so much force. But fairness doesn't build titans. Pressure does. Fire does. Failure does. You were forged. While they were shielded, you were shattered. And when you rebuilt yourself, you left out everything that made you weak. You kept only what was necessary. That's why you're lighter now, sharper, quieter, stronger. This isn't ego, it's clarity. You know who you are, and you no longer apologize for taking up space. You no longer shrink to fit their comfort zones. You stand, tall, blazing, uncompromising, because you remember what it was like to crawl, to beg, to question your own worth, and you'll never go back. You burned the bridge behind you. You crossed the line and drew a new one in blood. They keep asking, how TF did you become this? Hoping you'll say something simple, something they can replicate, but you can't explain it. Because this isn't teachable. This is born from the decision to be the last one standing when everything else falls apart. From choosing growth over comfort, again and again, until your soul became a fortress, until your name became a warning. This isn't confidence. This is certainty. This is knowing your place in the world isn't up for debate. This is walking into a room and not checking how much space you're taking up. but checking how much truth you're bringing in. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be felt, to be remembered, to be undeniable. They didn't prepare for this version of you. They prepared for the you that doubted, hesitated, asked for permission. But that version died. It served its purpose. It showed you who not to be. And now you walk with the ghost of your former self as a reminder, not of who you were, but of how far you've come. Every scar, every regret, every mistake, it's all currency now. Proof that you've earned the right to be this. They'll keep talking, wondering, blaming. But the truth is, they're scared. Not of you, but of what you represent. You're proof that change is possible, that power can be chosen, that the narrative can be rewritten. And if you did it, that means they could have too. And that's what hurts them the most. You make them face their reflection. You make them ask hard questions. And most people would rather hate you than face themselves. But that's not your problem. You didn't come this far to coddle anyone. You came to ascend, to dominate, to embody what happens when someone fully awakens. And now that you've tasted it, this feeling of being untouchable, not because you're better, but because you're whole. You'll never settle again. You'll never dilute again. You'll never, ever go back. Because forward is the only direction now. And anyone who can't handle your shine is welcome to look away. You were never made for smallness. That uneasy feeling you carried all your life, like you were meant for something vast and violent and true, that wasn't delusion. That was prophecy. A prophecy you wrote yourself, one broken moment at a time. There was always something in you that refused to settle, refused to bow, refused to comply with the rules they swore were law. That rebellion wasn't a flaw. It was the beginning of this version of you, the one they can't ignore anymore, the one that walks like a loaded question, like a promise that something uncontrollable has arrived. You feel illegally powerful because no one prepared them for someone like you. You're too much because they were raised on scraps of identity, told to stay quiet, stay pretty, stay small. But you shattered that narrative. You didn't stay. You didn't ask. You left the table and built your own kingdom from the rubble they buried you under. They tried to drown you in silence, and now they're gasping in the flood of your voice. This is what they never understood. You didn't want to become dangerous. You were forced to. Life kept pressing you against the edge, thinking you'd break. But the edge was where you became blade, and now they bleed when they get too close to your truth. You don't even need to speak. Your presence alone exposes their weakness. You've become the storm they thought would destroy you. The fire they tried to extinguish now lights the way for others and blinds those too scared to look. There's something sacred about the way you carry your pain now, not as a burden, but as a badge. Every scar is a stanza in your war poem, every loss, a training ground. You don't flinch anymore. You don't look back. You walk like someone who buried their past and built a throne on top of the grave. There's no regret here, only remembrance, only reverence for the version of you that didn't know they were a god in the making. They thought you'd break forever, but you used your broken pieces as armor. You made art of your agony. You turned mourning into momentum, and that's what makes you untouchable. Your pain doesn't control you, it fuels you. Your sadness doesn't weaken you, it sharpens you. Your rage isn't reckless anymore. It's refined, focused, sacred. You've become fluent in the language of chaos. While they fear uncertainty, you breathe it in. You understand now that control is an illusion and power comes from presence. That's why you walk with gravity now. Why your silence can split a room in half. Why your stare feels like judgment and salvation wrapped into one. You didn't skip the tutorial. You outgrew it. You walked through every lesson until the lessons became instinct, until you stopped needing maps because you became the terrain itself. You no longer explain. That's part of the power. You don't justify. You don't soften your edge for palates used to bland. You offer truth, raw and unfiltered. And if they can't handle it, they were never meant to sit at your table. You're not for everyone. And that's by design. Power isn't democratic. Not this kind. It's earned. It's carried. It's survived. And it costs. Oh, it costs. You paid with nights you thought would never end, with decisions no one saw, with sacrifices that made your soul scream, and now you carry yourself with that sacred, painful knowledge. Nothing real is given. It's taken, fought for, bled for. That's why you walk like this now. Why you don't run from confrontation. Why you don't flinch when tested. You've already faced worse, and you didn't just survive it. You devoured it. They want you to be humble. Not because it's virtuous, but because your power makes them uncomfortable. They call it arrogance. They call it attitude. But deep down, they know it's truth. They know you earned the right to move this way. That every inch of your energy was built from choices they were too afraid to make. So they mock what they can't match. They resist what they can't replicate. But you're beyond needing validation now. That's the most dangerous part. They can't control someone who no longer fears rejection, who no longer craves applause. You used to want to be understood. Now you only want to be unapologetically real. And that shift, that's where your ascension began. You don't play their games anymore because you've outgrown their board. You don't beg for seats because you built your own war council. The people who move with you now are forged, not found. You recognize warriors by their wounds, not their words. And you're no longer interested in anyone who flinches at your fire. You've become the kind of person who makes others remember themselves. Just by being. Just by existing as proof that transformation is real. That healing is ugly and hard and worth it. That greatness isn't born. It's built. One brutal decision at a time. One moment of self-respect at a time. One silence chosen over screaming at a time. You're not done. Not even close. This isn't the final form. This is just the shedding of the last layer. The cracking open of something deeper. Because now you see clearly. Now you move with intention. Now you understand that the world bends for those who refuse to break. That reality can be rewritten by those willing to bleed for it. You feel illegally powerful because the system was never meant to contain someone like you. They built it for compliance, for routine, for silence. But you were born for rebellion, for sacred disobedience, for creating new structures in your image. You are the glitch, the virus, the code rewrite. You are the living contradiction to everything they said was impossible. You don't walk in their footsteps, you walk on their ceilings. And they stare up in awe and fear because you are everything they could have been, if they hadn't chosen safety. And that's the truth, isn't it? You didn't become this by playing it safe. You chose the dangerous path, the lonely one, the one that looked like ruin until it revealed itself as resurrection. You walked through hell, not to prove a point, but to find out who you are. And now, you walk through life with that hellfire still in your lungs, and every breath you take reminds the world, I survived. I'm not afraid, and I will not be stopped.